that, we are just about ready. It takes like an extra few minutes to get everything from Zoom over to Facebook. But we love to use Zoom because, not everybody is on Facebook. Let's see, I think we're good. I got to find us now though. That's always the next tricky thing, to find it so I can share it to all the places. Here we go. We're going to share it to a group. I'm always jealous of those people who have people to do this for them. Always makes me super jealous. Let's see here. Good morning, Stephanie Escher. Okay, all right, we are good to go. So many good faces. So good morning, everyone. We are chatting intuition today as part of our grand finale of Expedition to Soul. So Expedition to Soul, in case you somehow missed that and you're tuning in as part of our community from other free classes, it was a free class that we ran earlier, last week it ended, and it was a 7-day really fun class on a quest to see what our soul selves might want us to know or hear or learn right now. And I had so much fun leading it. And it's probably like the most fun thing I think that we've led here for our free class in quite some time. So the link to check out all the replays and everything, it's in the weekly emails. If you missed sign up, you can just head to your weekly email. I sent it out on Wednesday. It went out late last week. And you can find the links there. So check your spam folder if you don't see it, because our stuff likes to end up in spam. And you can catch up on Expedition to Soul if you're like, what is this that you're talking about? I want to check it out. It sounds awesome. It was super awesome. And I really encourage you to check it out. So today, as our grand finale, I had the Facebook community vote on what they wanted to learn about, gave them some options, and intuition was the top choice. And remember too, that if you want to join us in Holistic Witchery, if you join us by the end of tomorrow, Monday, July 1st, we are sending out Sisters Enchanted mugs with a hand-selected crystal from us, as well as a thank you bonus gift for registering. And that expires tomorrow, although you can sign up till July 8th, but I would love to mail you some things. So take advantage of that. And this is the last of these mugs. We had a problem with our supplier this time, so I'm not ordering from them again. Ooh, there it goes. Oh, and Jennifer Jo says, I love the Facebook Messenger bot, giving me everything in one place too. Oh, glad to hear that you found that was useful. Yeah, we have this sweet bot. We named her Elphaba. If you were a Wicked fan, maybe you've heard of Elphaba. She's the green witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, right? Or the East. Which one is she? West? I forget. Anyway, Wicked Witch of the West in the Wizard of Oz, Elphaba. And yeah, so our bot Elphaba, if you're a bot subscriber, also sent you all the links right there. All right, guys, let's get to it then. So we are talking intuition. I have my notes here to try to keep on track because I love to get off track. So why do we want to talk about intuition more than just, I mean, a lot of us here watching this are kind of spiritual, witchy beings who love to use tools like tarot cards and runes and pendulums and love to hear our intuition in that way. But even beyond that, I love to talk about leading an intuitive life and what that can do for you. So I am by no means perfect. I've had lots of ups and downs in my life. I still have ups and downs. You know, life is a roller coaster. I'm always learning new lessons, always having to reevaluate. But one thing that I will say that I've always done in my life is led with intuition. So this could also have to do with me being having lots of Sagittarius in my birth chart. But I am a person that leads with my gut. If I get a great idea, or if I have the sudden, feeling like this is right for me, I jump in head first and always get the best of experiences from those things. So for me personally, I know that if I feel hesitation, I shouldn't do it, because I always know when it's right and I follow my intuition. So I think that leading your whole life through intuition and following that is an amazing skill and can open a lot of doors. But how do we hear our intuition? What do we know is our ego versus our intuition? and all that jazz. So if you're watching here, and there's so many of you that I see that are also in our Enchanted Journey program, which is you get a year of that if you join us in Holistic Witchery. We're kicking off our psychic skills unit tomorrow in Enchanted Journey. So you guys that are watching, every week for 13 weeks, you're going to get a printable and a lesson too, all around all this good stuff. So this is like a great door opener to that. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of intuition versus ego. And then I have 3 tips for you about building your intuition. So how do you know something is your intuition versus your ego? Now, there's no like exact science for this. There's not a, not like a checklist that I can give you that says this is exactly how you know. But here are some pretty clear indicators that it's not intuition and that it's your ego. So if you are making a decision based on fear of what's going to happen, that's your ego talking to you, not your intuition. So your intuition, your inner self, your higher self, your subconscious doesn't have this ability to fear like our ego does. I'll give you an example of my personal life, how in a time that I knew was my intuition, not my ego, right? I had an amazing job when I was young in my 20s. I had this great job with great pay. I had a company car. I had all these great trips and things like that. I, in a 2-week time period, quit it all, had no car, had no money, was negative in the bank, and decided to go to graduate school for something completely unrelated. But there was no fear attached to that decision. There was fear after I made it, certainly, like, oh crap, what did I do? How am I going to eat? I need to get a roommate, like stat. I need a car, I don't have one. What was I thinking? But the decision, that knowing that it was right for me, there was no fear attached to that, when there was definitely place for there to be fear, right? So when your ego is speaking and you can have other emotions attached to it, things like fear, anxiety, like an over sort of, I don't know how to explain this very well, like kind of an over sort of compensation of joy. So pure joy, like this feeling of relief and like that can be our intuition. But when we're talking ourselves into how happy we're going to be, when we're over analyzing and we're like, yeah, but if I don't do it, I'm going to feel this. And if I do it, I'm going to be so joyful. That kind of where we have to kind of talk ourselves into that place of joy, that's our ego. That's not intuition. So whenever we have these extra sort of emotions surrounding a decision or surrounding a thought, that's not intuition, that's ego. And that's our human selves trying to talk us through something, right? So your intuition is this thing that kind of just breathes, it breathes a response into you, breathes a knowing into you. It's when we all have this experience when we know who's back when we had landlines, we knew who was on the phone when it rang, right? Or maybe you meet a person and when you meet them, you just know right away whether or not you're going to be friends. Sometimes you just see a person and you're like, you and I are not going to be friends. I don't know why, but we're not. You're not a bad person. Our energy just doesn't work. That's all your intuition. And these things that happen, they're things we don't second guess because they're small blips on our radar. They're not big things. When we have these big things in our lives, like life-changing decisions, where to go to school, what car to buy, what house to buy, who to marry, those are all things that our ego takes over quickly with because there's so many unknowns. So our intuition is the part of us that kind of receives the message as to what to do right before our ego takes in. And that is the trick, is learning to recognize that small bit of intuition before your brain, your logical self, which is really important, right? My personal example of quitting my great job to go back to school on a whim with no money, no car, no roommate, all these bills to pay. I was able though to listen to that first little like, this feels right, I'm going to do it. And then afterwards, the fear rushed in. But most of the time, for many of us, we allow that fear to rush in first before we act on our decision. So learning to hear your intuition and then trust yourself to act on it is really, really big. So we can look at intuition in a lot of different ways. We can look at intuition in terms of things like using tarot cards and runes, which so many of us I know here want to use and receive a message and trust in it. We can look at intuition. Some people want to be able to hear from spirit guides or people that have passed, or be able to communicate with nature in a different way, and look at intuition in that way, kind of what messages are we receiving, which is actually a different thing than intuition. Those skills, those psychic skills to hear, being intuitive and trusting your intuition is the first step to that. So if that's what you're here for, and you're like, oh, I really want to learn how to hear from my spirit guides, or I really want to learn how to communicate with plants or animals or whatever, people who've passed, you have to learn to trust your intuition first for that to happen. If we're not trusting in our intuition and able to hear it, we're not going to trust, certainly, when we think that we might be hearing something other than ourselves. If we can't trust in hearing ourselves, how can we trust in hearing in the other, right? So I think that when we're on this road towards living an intuitive sort of life, it's really important to trust your first knowing, and hear what you need to hear. And then the real skill comes in acting on that before your human and logical fear comes in. Okay, so what are 3 things that we can do to, and hello, I see so many hellos. Welcome to our chat on intuition here on a Sunday morning. And yeah, happy Canada Day to those of you in Canada. Isn't Canada Day tomorrow, or is it today? I thought it was July 1st for some reason, but perhaps it's today. In the US, what does that, I don't know. But it is a holiday week, I think, for Canada and the US, right? So happy holiday week to everybody. Okay, so some tips for you on building your intuition. Now, some of these might make some of us feel kind of frustrated because it's things that we've tried and haven't worked. It's things that we hear over and over again from other people, and we're like, yeah, I'm sick of hearing that. But the idea is to do it in a way that works for you. Also, to identify why these strategies aren't working. Okay, so I was right, July 1st. So tomorrow, happy Canada Day. To figure out why for you that these things might not be working. What is the roadblock for you? And move through that. So we will talk about that as we go as well. Okay, so the first tip I have for you is one that everybody talks about, and you're probably going to get sick of hearing about, and probably could be like, oh, duh, Sarah, major eye roll. But the first one is to quiet your mind. So this is where meditation comes in. And so many people, myself included, hate to hear about having to meditate because, one, who has time to have a meditation practice? I know a lot of people do, but also I don't have time for that. Secondly, when we say that we don't have time, we have to remember that it's not a priority for us. We make time for anything that's a priority. If it's a priority, you make time for it, bottom line. So one thing that I try really hard not to say is I don't have time for things. I make time for things that are priority. And if I don't have time, I don't have time for so many things. I don't have time for an abundance of things. But the reason I don't have time is because it's not a priority right now. I have 10 other things that are pressing priorities, right? So I'm not discounting that fact that there's just not enough time in the day for everything. There totally is not. But if it was a priority, you would make time for it. So just like, I like to say that it's not a priority right now, instead of saying, I don't have time, but I do say I don't have time a lot. So quieting your mind, we need to make that a priority. Whether for you, that's meditation. It might be going for a walk. Maybe you are a person who you're like, okay, so I can't prioritize exercise and meditation on the same day. So maybe you prioritize doing some yoga or an exercise video or a walk, something that gets you out of your logical self right now, running through your to-do list, whatever that is. For me, when I was in my early 20s and my late teens, I had really bad anxiety and like to the point where it was really hard for me to meet other people and like get out there and get to know people, which those are the times when most people are out there getting to know people, right? And I was making all kinds of poor life decisions left and right. And the only thing that would quiet my mind enough was to not be in that anxious ego sort of logical thought or illogical thoughts most of the time, was to dance. So I signed up for an adult hip hop class and an adult ballet class, and I had it once a week. And it was like that 1 hour class a week. It was both of them in one class. The 1 hour was the only hour a week that I wasn't completely just lost in like what am I doing? Why isn't this happening? Why isn't this happening? Why is this happening? Blah, 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 blah. It was the only hour a week that really quieted my mind. So if for you, meditation is something that you're not prioritizing for whatever reason, maybe it's because it doesn't seem as pressing as other things you're doing. Maybe it makes you fall asleep and you're like, I can't be falling asleep right now. Maybe you feel like it doesn't work for you. Whatever the reason is, prioritize something that quiets your mind. So we have over here in the comments that for Cinnamon and Cinnamon, both of them in our Facebook community here, are telling us that it is music for them. Music can be a great way to quiet your mind. Stephanie has learned to make it a morning priority, which has helped, and only do 5 minutes, but it still works well. Yeah, it's that act of quieting your mind. And the more that you can quiet your mind, the better able you're going to be to hear yourself, and put that practice of getting out of your own mind. So Patty says, I love ballet class. So good for my mental state and helps solidify the belief I can do hard things. Yes. Dance class for me all day, every day, or a yoga class. And honestly, for me, it has to be typically something that gets me out of my house, because if I'm in my house, then I end up prioritizing other things over myself. So scheduling it in is really huge for me. Althea uses the Headspace meditation app. And Marcy says there's a part of her that feels guilty for taking the time. So it's good to hear and make self-care a priority. Yeah, for sure. And Linda, music and coloring are her things. So whatever can quiet your mind, whether it's meditation, anything that quiets your mind. And the idea here with quieting your mind then is to just allow it to be quiet, not necessarily fill that with trying to hear your intuition, not trying to hear your intuition, right? Like you just want to not be in your ego self. And the practice of not being in your ego self frees you from all of these human thoughts that build like these big brick walls and fences to hearing what you need to hear. You think about like when you need to declutter a space, right? Like everything, or if you really need to clean a room or something, you have to take everything out first, or like those big messy closets, everything has to come out first. And then you see it with a fresh idea. You're like, oh yeah, this closet is really big. There's plenty of room in here. And it's the same with our minds. We need to just get everything out. And then it's like creates space for us to hear and to think and to receive. But when we're constantly just filling ourselves with information and ideas and thoughts and blah, 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 and to-do lists and anxiety and all of these things, there's never that clean slate. So just quieting your mind and not trying to replace it with like, what is my soul self want today? Just making the space to be quiet. And that will innately, the more you do that, keep giving you that fresh blank slate every day if you can get some time to quiet your mind. Yeah, you guys are so awesome. Zumba, martial arts, so many gardening, all of these cool things. Erin says that I ironically quiet her mind. I'm gonna tell my husband you said that. He's gonna be like, what? Okay, so the first thing is quieting your mind. And again, if you feel like there's nothing that's quieting your mind, I would challenge you to say, well, why is like, what is wrong about these scenarios that's not helping you to quiet your mind? Do you need to leave the house to do it? I know for me to quiet my mind, I need to be out of my house. Being in my house does not quiet my mind at all. I need to be literally away, away to quiet my mind. Being here just does not do it. So yeah, like look at the challenges to you. What is it that's not allowing you to do these things? If you're a person who really wants to have a meditation practice and so far you've not scheduled it in, you've not prioritized it, ask yourself why. Again, is it because you feel like you don't have the time? Do you feel like when you're home, you just end up doing all these things? Like when you leave for work for the day, sit in your car for 5 minutes before you turn it on to drive home maybe, and find that space. It was somebody, one of my peers, she told me that she just schedules in at the end of her day. Like if she works till 5, she's self-employed also, her last half hour, 4:30 to 5 is just her time. Like that is her time. But she works till 5 as far as her family's concerned. But as of 4:30, she's done working and takes that half hour to herself. So whatever you need to do. Yes, Sarah says kids would interrupt me. Me too. That's why I'm like, I would have to get out of my house to prioritize that time for sure. And it doesn't have to be every day. I mean, if you can, that's great. For me, even just taking a shower, if I can keep the door locked, inevitably, like Sarah, I have a child that ends up pounding on my door and doesn't let me be quiet. But whatever those moments are, try to get them in. Okay, so that's the first thing, quiet your mind. And if you're finding a really hard time finding time to do that, think about what are those barriers to you. That was actually part of our expedition to Seoul, where one of the days I said, what is a barrier to you in taking the time to do this expedition, and then how can you work around that, or how can you make it happen for you? Okay, so the second thing is, and you guys are already touching on this, the things that quiet your mind are the things that also, in a lot of cases, make you feel creative. So creativity really breeds intuition. And the reason for that is because when we're in a creative state, we're feeling blissful, we're feeling joyful, and that helps us detach from all the human logic stuff that gets in the way of us feeling our intuition. So whether you want to be a better tarot card reader, you want to just hear yourself and know, like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I feel so lost in the world and I need to make a choice and I don't know what I need to do. Whether you want to hear that, you want to read for other people, you want to one day be a psychic medium, like whatever it is that you want to do with this intuition building that we're talking about today, getting creative helps to put you in that happy place. And when we're in a happy place, we are more in tune to ourselves because we want more of that happy feeling, right? And so think of like when you're eating cake, that sugar high that you get, right? Like you want more of that. And it's the same when we're being creative, and way better for our bodies than pounding an entire chocolate cake, is that we want more of that feeling. We want to experience as much of that as possible. So, and this is another thing that I run into with women all the time, is lack of creativity and lack of time for creativity. So Iris says that creativity fills up my mind. It doesn't silence it. So Iris, for you, so if you are a person that when you're creative, I would ask the question of, what is your mind being filled with, right? So for me, when I am being creative, my best creative outlet really is, honestly, is creating class materials. Like, it's my favorite thing to do. I can create Sisters Enchanted class materials till I am blue in the face. I love doing it. I love putting the ideas together. It's a great creative outlet for me. And when I'm doing it, I'm in the zone. And is my mind filled? Yeah, my mind is brimming with ideas, but I'm getting more ideas. I get insights about my own self when I'm creating it, and my intuition, like where to pivot in the class, what to change, what to scrap, really shines in that creativity. So if you're being creative and your mind gets filled with things like, how am I going to pay my bills this month? Should I move to Texas? Should I like I don't know if you're, that's obviously a weird example, but like, should I make this career change? If your mind's filled with stuff like that while you're being creative, then I would suggest like thinking of a different creative outlet, or moving your creative practice to somewhere where you're not surrounded by those things that make you think that way, right? Like I can't create class materials for the Sisters Enchanted and have like my bill calendar in front of me, because it distracts me and gives me anxiety. But if I'm just have my class creation stuff up, my notes, like I'm in the zone and it's good and I feel great and I can hear what I need to be hearing during that time. But if I have like my logical life stuff around me, then that's not good. So my mind is definitely racing when I'm creative, but I'm hearing what I need to do. Alternatively, like as another example of that in my own personal life is, and that's like really my creative outlet is creating classes. But other times that I'm creative is doing artwork with my kids. So we have a practice of like, I just let them make whatever. I'm one of those messy moms. I don't care. There could be paint on the walls. I just wash it off. It's not a big deal. Paint everywhere, glitter. I don't care. But we'll have like glue, glitter, scissors, whatever. And the kids are just doing their thing. And sometimes I'm helping them. We'll have music on. But it's in those moments where it's just like seeing them be happy and feeling into it myself. Like, because if I'm doing it, they'll do it. If I'm just sitting there, they'll like bug me. But so like just painting or coloring or drawing or cutting or whatever, like I just get ideas. I get one idea after the other, after the other, after the other, or I get thoughts, or I get aha moments, or like if I had an argument with my husband, suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I didn't hear in that. And it comes to me in those moments. So it's creativity that's making you feel blissful and joyful, right? If your creativity is not making you feel blissful and joyful, then the thoughts that you're going to have are probably not blissful and joyful either. So it's okay to have thoughts while you're being creative. We want them to be blissful and joyful thoughts. So Jennifer Joe says, define quiet. Would you say being in the moment and not wandering? Yeah, being in the moment as much as possible. And when you find your mind wandering, as minds do, just being like, oh, that's a thought, and then coming back to the present if you can, like putting this idea, somewhere else, just acknowledging it and being like, oh yeah, I have to pay that bill. And now look at these trees, like trying. And it's hard and it's a practice for sure. For me, like, I totally understand that it's a practice because I'm a mover. I'm a mover and I'm not a quiet person. I'm not actually sitting still, like in its own way, gives me anxiety because I feel like I should be doing something. So it's not easy for me to not wander and not do things, right? So yeah, I think that quieting your mind, Jennifer Joy, I love that you asked that question, is certainly more about being present than actually not thinking anything. And then acknowledging when things come up. And that can tell us a lot about our intuition too. If the thoughts that are coming up from us when we're trying to quiet our minds are like worry or fear, we know we need to deal with those things because it's preventing us from being intuitive people, right? So for me, money is something I still worry about all the time because, I have people I have to pay here at Sisters Enchanted. We have family expenses. My daughter we pay a lot in different therapy bills and whatnot for my daughter every month. And, it's a lot, and it's a lot to manage also. So for me, if I'm seeing that I'm constantly thinking about this, I'm not able to be present, or I can't decide on what to do for a class, or I can't choose what my next step is somewhere, then getting that out of my brain is very helpful. So I'll just sit down and write out the whole list of everything, when it's due, how much money there is here, how much money there is here, how it's all getting, and just seeing it out in front of me is very helpful for me to clear my mind. So I'm a big fan of just having a notebook and brain dumping things every single day. When I can't hear and I can't decide, I brain dump, and it helps me a lot. Okay, so the first thing is to quiet your mind, and the next thing is to get creative. So we're quieting our mind so that we can learn to hear our inside self and not our external self. And that's a practice, and it's a practice that many of us, myself included, have to come back to over and over and over again because it's so hard to follow through with and stick with. The next thing is to get creative. And I love that point from Iris, was it Iris? I think, yeah, that creativity for her actually makes her mind go more. And it's okay to have your mind going when you're being creative. We want to be in like a joyful, blissful state. And the idea here is that we're training ourselves to, one, separate from our ego selves as much as possible, two, seek joy, seek the things that bring us joy, because we want more of that. And in being creative, the idea is we're getting more creative. So we're practicing being quiet and separating from our logic selves. And then we are making a practice of finding things that make us super happy. Like, we don't want to stop doing them because our creative juices are flowing and we're so excited and we just want to keep doing it. And we're like training ourselves to seek these experiences. And in those experiences, that's where we find our intuition, because our intuition is always going to guide us to more joy, always. And that's what we want to learn to hear. But we need to quiet ourselves, learn to be present, and seek and like train ourselves to want that joyful feeling. So after we've done those things, or while doing those things, the third tip for you is to start to identify how your body feels when experiencing different emotions. So again, our intuition is always going to guide us towards the thing that's going to bring us joy and the easiest, lightest, brightest thing for us. Now, I don't think that, most of us will never live fully in the things that are lightest, brightest, and easiest for us. And that's because we're humans and we are here to learn. And we learn, unfortunately, sometimes through the experiences that are not so great. And we have emotions, we have grief, we have fear, we have ego, we have all this stuff. We're never going to be completely rid of it. But it's a practice to try to hear when it's coming up, to have the opportunity to have things be easier and more joyful for us, right? So feeling into your body and seeing how your body reacts. And some ways to do this are simply to think of different experiences in your life. So times in your life when you felt really really put upon, like really, you got the short end of the stick. You were super like miserable and unhappy with something that came up, or like you were always fighting with somebody, or you're always fighting with yourself, like whatever it is, just you can kind of put yourself, remember these negative emotions. Now, I do want to just say before that if it's too close to home still, if it's an emotion you've not been able to kind of get past, it's something you're still living through, wait until you're ready to do it. There's no like urgency behind this. It's just another tool in trusting your intuition. So if you think back on a time for you that was really hard, and like feel in your body how that's making you feel. Is it giving you jitters? Is it making you like get that nauseous feeling? Are you feeling like hunched over? Are you like, is your mind suddenly just like racing with like more thoughts that come up from it? When we start to identify how our body reacts to different experiences that we've had, then we can instantly say, that's not an intuitive insight. That's fear, that's anxiety, that's me not wanting to experience that again. Which you might say, like, wasn't that your intuition if it's telling you don't want to experience it? But you will always have choices, right? When we're trying to hear our intuition, there's always choices. There's decisions to be made. There's whether it's looking at a tarot card or trying to decide whether or not you're imagining something or you're hearing from like spirit or source or whatever it is, or if you're just trying to make a choice for yourself, you're always deciphering between two things when you're like, where's my intuition right now? So if we feel, like, okay, so how is this decision feeling when I hear this other thing and I think to myself, I'm pretty sure that that's not of my mind, or like with these tarot cards, I think this is what it's telling me. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety or you're feeling like, I don't know, then that's probably not your ego is getting in the way of you hearing that intuitively. If it's a knowing where you're just like, I feel so like relief trying to say this out loud right now, like I feel relief saying this, then that is an indicator that is your intuition is speaking to you. And the same with decision making. So when you're trying to make a decision, you're like, what's my intuition telling me? And I just can't decide. How is it feeling in your body? Are you feeling like how you feel when you're very creative, when you're up all night scrapbooking or painting, or like, for me, like writing a new class and you just don't want to get off the computer and you're so irritated that it's 1 a.m. you got to go to bed. You're like, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to keep doing this. How does that feel? Does the decision you're facing make you feel that same sort of feeling? Or are you feeling this other feeling that you felt at a time when things weren't so great? We want to chase the things that make us feel in those good, joyful, blissful moments. And that's our intuition speaking. So when you pause, like that first reaction you have to something, is it pure joy or is it like disdain and scared and fear and like, oh no, I'm going to vomit? Like, what is your first feeling? And that's your intuition. So another example of this, and an example I'll use of a personal example of me is in making decisions, like business decisions even. It's always this, like the first idea, and these can be hard decisions too. So the first thing you think that makes you feel relief, like this is a relief. But then you talk yourself out of it within 5 seconds and you're like, no, I can't do that. I need to do this. It's that instant of relief. That is the intuitive thought you want to chase down and try to separate yourself from the rest of the stuff, because right away our guilt comes in. We're like, I can't let these people down. I can't make this choice, blah, 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 blah. What will people think of me? I don't even know. That is your human self that's going to come in right away. So Kelly asked the question, or said, for me, it's deciphering a judgment or intuition. And yeah, it's that first, like your intuitive hit it can come and go in a blink of an eye and you might not even notice it. So like I challenge you in the moment when you're making decisions or you're thinking about what you should do, or if you're doing a tarot card reading or you're trying to hear from your spirit guides or something, what is that very first instant thought that comes into your mind, and like hold on to it. And then you can still experience all the human stuff that comes up for you, but come back to that first thought and then explore that and be like, so how would I feel if I did this thing? How would I feel if I said this out loud right now? Not because judgment and fear, this typically has to do with all other people. It's like how we're perceived, how we're letting people down, how people are going to experience us, what we're going to have to experience from other people as a result of our decisions. But when we're listening to our intuition, it's going to be about us and only about us, not about anything else. So what is this thing, that first thing that you grabbed onto that seemed maybe illogical, maybe crazy, and explore it and say, how does that make me feel? Now, once we start to lean into our intuition, it doesn't mean that we're always going to make those intuitive choices, even if we know that our gut is telling us one thing. And sometimes it's because we can't. Like maybe, for you, like I have 2 little kids and I'm never away from them. So maybe my intuition is like, Sarah, you need a break. But in the moment, like I'm the only one home alone with my kids, like not right this moment, but in the moment that I'm having that insight, I might not be able to act on that. But what I want to do is know, you know what, my gut is telling me I need time, and then set it up to make that happen. So we can't always just follow our intuition, in that moment, but it's about recognizing it and knowing that this is what my gut is telling me. And I know if I don't follow this sometime in the near future, then this is not going to be super great. Right. And yeah, so that's what we want to start to do, is look at where in your body can you tell something that's giving you relief versus making you feel really heavy and like you're wearing like the world's heaviest backpack hiking up a mountain. And if it's making you feel very heavy, like you're hiking up a mountain, that is not what your intuition wants you to be doing. It's not what your soul self is speaking to you about. That is your ego self carrying that around. And sometimes, like I said, there's nothing you can do about that in the moment. Like me, when I'm like, this is a mountain climbing backpack and I just need a break. But sometimes you can't have that because of real life, right? Like we have to still live this life. So, but knowing what your intuition wants you to do and making time to act on that is super duper important, or at least making a plan around it, thinking about it, exploring it a little bit more, especially if it seems crazy. Often our intuition and the things our intuition guides us to do are going to seem really absurd. And like, how can I even do that? And that's because our ego selves are really good at just sticking with what we know, which is often making us crazy, right? Like, like, what do I know? Getting up every day, doing the same 10 things, going to bed at night. That's what I know. And then doing something different can feel really scary and unusual. Kelly says, basically drop everything, gets us closer to our goddess selves. Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing if you could just be like, I don't know, like have some mad bewitch skills and wiggle your nose and be like, now I'm on vacation because my intuition told me so. That would be perfectly super amazing. Yeah, and so those of you that are in our Enchanted Journey class, like I said, we're doing 13 weeks of psychic skills. So each week for 13 weeks, I'm going to give you a different thing to consider, a different exercise to do to start working on all of this stuff. And if you join us in Holistic Witchery, you get that included for the next year. So that's super awesome. All right, so we'll round back up again and we'll just recap. So the first thing we talked about was quieting your mind. And I love that it was pointed out that that really means being present in the moment. So if for you, that means dancing, walking, doing whatever you can do to get away from your human stuff that's stressing you out, that's what you need to do, and try to prioritize that in some way. Cinnamon says, some days journaling, some days I write until my pen runs out of ink. Yeah, journaling is a very powerful tool to use. And when I had my previous business where I worked with kids with learning differences, many of them were pulled out of school, often for behavior things, and we're trying to get back into school full time. We were like transitioning them, and we would use writing, like free writing journal time, as a way to when we were like, when frustration was mounting, or right before a kid had to do a presentation or something, and maybe it was a kid who didn't like to talk in front of people, or didn't want people looking at them, or they had a lot of anger or anxiety around something. And we would just set the timer for 10 minutes and just write. It could be something silly. It could be about the moment. And it could be about how angry and frustrated they were, how angry they were at me sometimes. Got that from a few students. Be like, I hate Sarah. She's making me do this and I don't want to. And that's totally cool. Get it out, But journaling can be amazing for quieting someone's mind, which is why I love to do a brain dump list, like every day, actually. I'll sit down and just whatever stuff is clogging up my mind, I write it down. And some of these things I circle back to, some of them I never do, but I get it out of my head just in a big list. So quieting your mind, getting creative. And the idea behind getting creative is because it makes us feel joyful. So when I tell you to get creative, I want you to do something that you don't want to stop doing. And that comes in all different ways. Some people that's writing, some people that might be cooking. It could be rearranging furniture. I don't know, whatever makes you just bliss out and like you just don't want to stop doing it. And you look at the clock and you're like, oh crap, it's the middle of the night. I have to sleep because I got to get up in the morning. That's the kind of creative energy you want flowing. And because we want more of that. So when we start to learn to quiet our minds, we're going to look for opportunities to feel that joy. And that's our intuition talking to us. Then recognizing what our bodies are telling us. So how does your body feel? Does it feel heavy and like, oh, this choice is weighing like the world on my shoulders? Or this choice makes me want to stay up till 1, 2 in the morning and just do it because it seems so awesome. That's your intuition. Those are the roads you want to follow. Let's see here. Christy is asking about the quest being in an enchanted journey. Christy, right now we're putting it in holistic witchery, but we'll circle back to that one for you. And it's still up until January 15th also. Let's see here. And Linda says that you're a special ed teacher and you've done the same. Yeah, it's such a good strategy. Christina asked in our Enchanted Journey Facebook group the other day about how I use my intuition and everyday magic in my education business. And intuition in kids is like especially kids that learn differently. If you have a kiddo or you work with kids who learn differently, teaching them to trust their gut in a moment and then speak, that's your throat chakra stuff. We just finished the chakra unit in holistic witchery. And we talk about kids and chakras in there and how it's different than working with energy of adults, because kids, they're still, we don't actually develop all of our organizational mind, executive functioning skills till people are like 25. And so working with people younger than that, and especially younger kids, their energy is way different than working with that in an adult. But you can teach kids at any age about this idea of listening to their gut and their intuition, and then advocating for themselves accordingly, which is all throat chakra stuff, speaking your truth. So I love how much this stuff does integrate into everyday life. So Kelly says, someone told me once, don't just sit there, be aware you're sitting there. Yeah, that is powerful. And because I don't always like reading what my students have written. Yeah, I've definitely had a few socially challenged teenagers write some fairly unpleasant things about me or to me. And like, okay. So I see you feel that way. Don't know what to do about it. Let's see here. Cinnamon says brain dump is a lot better use of my verbiage than my bewitched journal. Yeah, brain dump. I'm a big brain dumper. I even keep one for the Sisters Enchanted. I have a digital brain dump, which like freaks everybody out when they see it. And you're like, what is going on? Yep, Annalise, you can watch this replay. It'll be right here on Facebook right after. And if you are one of the people on Zoom who's not a Facebook person, I do have to download it and then upload it, and I can send that link out for you. Let's see. Linda says, I integrated this into my classroom a few years ago, and it's amazing to see the growth. Yeah, and their abilities and confidence, for sure. That's a personal side note of my story. My daughter, she'll be 5 in July, so this coming month. And I've known she was different since she was born, and she struggles socially with, we're not really like, she's not even quite 5, but so some mix of sensory processing disorder, Asperger's, social anxiety, something in that bubble. And since she was 14 months old, I've taught her to say space. Even we have her on video at 14 months old telling people space, like, and I think teaching kids to see and know when their body's not reacting well to a situation, which is their intuition, and then advocate for it, is so important. And it's a thing we can do as adults too, that we don't do because we don't want to disappoint people. We're afraid of what people are going to think of us. But when we listen to our intuitions and use our throat chakra muscle and advocate for ourselves and speak our truth, that's when we open the doors to so much more amazing stuff. So yeah, like teach the kids and teach ourselves to do the same. When was the last time you told somebody you needed space when you needed it? Like how many times do we just let people keep like getting us to do things we don't want to do. Like, oh yeah, I'll do this again, even though I don't want to. Like we don't say no because we don't want to let people down. But so we can learn a lot from these kiddos, especially that do advocate for themselves. Yes, Christy opened a yoga studio, which I think is so awesome, and it's so great. I love your focus on that. You've been so focused on that, and it's amazing. Yeah, and as you said, with preschoolers, need some space. Yeah, Scarlett's been telling people space since she could talk. Thanks, Randy, for saying that. Yeah, I like to think Scarlett and I were perfectly placed on this earth together. So anyway, yeah, that's also a little glimpse into Holistic Witchery for those of you who are on the fence about signing up. We talk about all of this great stuff in Holistic Witchery, and I aim to give you the tools to help people in your own life with the same things, which is why it's a certification program. So that you can say, like, I did the work and I learned the stuff and I'm awesome, and can make lives better through a little bit of Holistic Witchery. Because what's not better with a little bit of Holistic Witchery? Seriously, everything. It's like putting whipped cream on nearly anything. It's always better. All right, guys. So that is it for our intuition class. Thank you all for hanging out with me. And there's so many people here today on a Sunday, the holiday kickoff for both Canada and the US. So I do appreciate you taking the time to hang with me. And if you are interested, at 1 p.m. in just a few hours, or yeah, like an hour, I'm going to go eat lunch right now. I am hosting an information session on Holistic Witchery. If you want to learn more about it, see what it's all about. We are sending thank you gifts in the form of one of our Sisters Enchanted mugs and a personally chosen crystal for you. I will head over to our space where we have all the crystals, probably on Tuesday or Wednesday, and choose them and get those, get them sent off. And if you've already signed up for Holistic Witchery, don't worry, you're not missing anything. We will get you the email for your address and welcome form. We just wait until like everybody's signed up and do it at once. So if you are watching, you're like, I signed up and I haven't heard from you, Sarah, you will. We try to keep it organized, which is a hard task, but we try really hard. So you will hear from us. All right. Thank you guys for hanging with me today. And those of you on Zoom, I will send out the replay to this later on as well, so that you have it, and find some time to clear your mind if you can today amongst all the celebrating. Oh, Carolyn is asking, will you still offer mugs through a new vendor? We're hoping to before the end of the year. So these ones will get, through the ones we have first, and then explore other options for them. They're handmade, so they're not super easy to acquire. Yeah, there's like usually 3 or 4 months when we order them before we get them. So even if we order them in like August or September, we wouldn't have them till the end of the year. So, all right, guys, have a great day, everyone. And I'll talk to y'all soon. And I hope to see some of you in Holistic Witchery also, or in the information session in 1 hour. Okay, bye.